here to talk about how we drive innovation, how you can drive innovation, more innovation, through playfulness, through relationships, through friendship, and through love affairs. So let me explain. My first slide is this. What's that? Please, someone help me. In the audience, someone help me. What's that? It's an egg? Well, that's well done, yeah. You're not thinking out the box here. It's golf. It's not golf. Anyone else? Well, let me tell you a story. I was with my son at the weekend. He's 6 years old, and he wanted to go and catch caterpillars. So I went to the garden, and I was looking for caterpillars everywhere. Have you ever tried to find a caterpillar? Well, if you haven't tried to find a caterpillar, go and try to find a caterpillar. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. And so we looked for about 20 minutes, and we couldn't find anything at all, under the leaves, in the bushes and so forth, under the shed. And he said, "It's okay, Daddy, it's okay. I've got an idea." So he went inside the house, and he came back outside the house, and he came out with some leaves in his hand. And this part here is the nest, the leaves. Then he came out with this little ice cream cone from his sister's little set of make-believe kitchens, and he put that down. And he put the egg on top, which he'd actually rolled and taken the shell off inside, because we had eggs for breakfast. And then he stuck a stick in it, and then he put the leaf on. And the whole idea is that it can catch caterpillars, because he thinks that caterpillars like eggs. I don't know any difference if they do or not. I can tell you it didn't work, but that's not the point. The point is that he thought that a caterpillar would like the leaves, they'd be attracted to the nest at the bottom. He chose the ice cream cone because then the caterpillar could come up to the egg and be safe. And then he could eat the egg, and then he could walk up the stick, and then he could go onto the leaf and eat the leaf or just sit in the shade. And it's that concept, for me, which is that childly world of imagination, which is what we forget as adults. Completely forget. In his mind, that's the ultimate caterpillar trap. It didn't work. The problem is that we're in this world of fear of judgment, constant fear of judgment from when we come up to be an adult. Kids don't have that. They don't have that constantly told that they can't do this and they can't do that. We're constantly judged by our peers. We're constantly judged, and the problem is that, if I think about it, schools really sort of drive that fear of judgment. You think about the way that we bring up our kids. They don't really need school anymore in many ways. You've got Google, for Christ's sake. I could be an expert in anything pretty quickly. But our school system literally drives that kind of crushing of creativity. So you're worried about putting your hand up in school to be wrong. You learn to be worried about being wrong. And that doesn't drive innovation. That doesn't drive imagination at all. So schools is a pretty bad place to start. You think about the way they test kids. They test kids. And do you know what? Even if you're pretty intelligent in the world of academia, the problem is that you're tested and you may get 60% in the score, but you're only 60% good. 60% good. You're not 100%. So you're worried about, but you constantly learn to be judged in many ways. You think about politics and our political systems, and the UK was governed by the Conservatives for many years, and this is the Conservative logo. The Conservatives itself, the word Conservative means cautious of change. And yet our whole kind of country is brought up with this caution of change. They literally suppress the need to change. They suppress the need for innovation in many ways. And we worry in the UK why we haven't got any entrepreneurs anymore, except for Silicon Roundabout. And that's only a small percentage of people. So schools are crushing creativity, they're crushing imagination, and so are the world and the way that our countries are brought up, educated and governed. So what I believe we need to do is harness this world of naivety in many ways. Naivety is a phenomenal thing, a brilliant thing to do. Again, my son Jacob, this whole presentation is about my son. Actually, my daughter in a minute as well. This is my son, this is on holiday. And yeah, I'm not going to go into the world that kids are brought up on their first primary kind of interaction mechanism, which is touch. I'm not going to go into that. I think we all know that. There's loads of videos out there about that. But he's on holiday. Something happens on the TV, and he walks up and he presses the button to turn it off. That's just normal in his world. Did I tell him he was stupid? No, I thought it was quite endearing. But if my mate, an adult, had done that, I'd have sworn at him, told him he was stupid. And again, you're judged straight away. So we need to harness this world of naivety. Because if you think about it, some of the most successful people in the world haven't been brilliant academics at all. Think about Richard Branson, the way that he chartered his first aeroplane to create Virgin Airlines. If you heard the story about that, if he had really thought about the actual concerns about setting up an airline, he wouldn't have done it. He was naive, but he did it. Think about Apollo 11. If I'd have told those astronauts at the time the actual fuel tanks, the 3 fuel tanks which sent the rocket up to space, if I'd have told them that NASA weren't quite sure whether they were going to explode or not, they were going to they could easily explode. They weren't sure whether that could happen. Would they have gone up? No, they didn't tell the astronauts. But what they did do is they moved the actual audience 3.5 miles away from the actual launch pad. Not because of fumes, but because that was the distance. If they did explode, the shrapnel wouldn't reach the audience. If I'd have told them that they couldn't go to the toilet for the length of the actual duration of the flight, of the mission, and the actual fact they had to go on anti-diarrhea tablets for the whole duration, would they have gone? I don't know, maybe not. There's nothing better than going to the toilet when you really need to. So, naivety is a phenomenal thing. The key thing is to move forward in a world of encouragement. And you think about it, we don't do that very much in our organizations at all. We're not set up to encourage at all. It's very rare that we encourage with the level of I do to my children. So back to my children for a second. This is a picture by my daughter of an owl. Now, call me old-fashioned, but that's no owl. You think about it, that's an owl. Should she have done that? That's an owl. But she drew that. She's 17. I would expect more from that. For that. No, she's actually 3.5. And she literally drew that. And what did I do? I said, oh my God, Fred, that is amazing. What a brilliant owl. What a phenomenal owl. That's just brilliant. You're so clever. And it is pretty clever for a 3-year-old to draw an owl like that. But we don't do that in our organizations at all. We go through appraisals and have you done well in these certain criteria and so forth, constantly worried about fear of judgment. So one of the key things is to give people this level of encouragement so they feel secure. And that's what we do to our children, but we don't do it as adults. So what we do as adults is we judge them in a single way. We judge them as if they're not clever, they're stupid. What Albert Einstein said many years ago is everyone's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life thinking that it's stupid, which is so true. And that's quite often the way that we always feel that we're stupid and we can't do this and we can't do that. So he got it right a long time ago. And so do monkeys. This is moving into the world of literally friendships, building that level of trust. And the way that monkeys learn is that they walk around and they play. And they play and they learn to trust more. And that element of play is the most important thing that we forget to do as adults, especially in organizations. Our organizations aren't set up to play, but when we do, and we let drop all of our kind of inhibitions aside, we start to build friendships. And friendships are created when you feel secure. And when you feel secure, you can start to be naive. And I think this is the key that creative agencies and software development companies of the future really have to harness. Step away from the side of push aside the concept of their appraisal mechanisms and literally encourage, educate through play rather than anything else, which is a weird thing to do. So I think the adult word for play is, it's not a swear word, it's risk. What we do, if we can really, when we're risking stuff, we're playing. In AKQA, we really pushing the boundaries. We're playing all the time, we're having fun. That's when our best ideas come. By an absolute country mile, we're having fun. Normally when you're smashed down the pub. That's the truth of our world of play. But there are other things you can do, which if you look out at the world of the internet and actually start to Google a few things around what you could do to harness play and bring that into your organization, your ideas will go out the roof and your imagination will start to fly. Think of Thomas Heatherwick. Thomas Heatherwick is a phenomenal designer. And he was asked, and he's done so many iconic things in the world, and he was asked to do the Olympic cauldron. And his whole organisation, the way he's built his team, is this world of kind of security and encompassing of play and fun. And they think completely different about the way they approach a design project. And what Thomas really, once you start to work in a world of play, you start to forget the rules. And he was given rules around how to build this cauldron, right? He wanted to make it memorable. If you think about the Olympic cauldron, though, what Olympic cauldron do you remember from past? None. Not one do you remember. Maybe you remember the one when they fired it up and lit it through a bow and arrow, but that's roughly about it. And so they decided to completely forget the rules. And he was told the rules were no moving parts. It had to be on top of the court. It had to be on top of the Olympic Stadium, so for everyone to see. And it had to stay there for forever and a day, to live forever. So what did he do? He gave it 180 moving parts. He put it in the center, down on the floor of the Olympic Stadium, and he basically allowed it to be dismantled at the end of the Olympic ceremony, and each of those petals went back to the country who created all the competing countries. All those petals went back to their countries so they could have a part of the Olympics. He forgot the rules because the way that they work in that whole organisation is fun, it's secure, it's friendships. And that's the way he hires his organisation, is he hires his friends or people who he thinks can be friends. So how do you create that in your organisation? Well, what you don't do is this. I was at work the other day and we were sort of redesigning one of our kind of overflow spaces. And I saw this plan come through about where everyone was going to sit. So the concept is we needed more space. So the space designers went away and they created this thing, which is, I could only call it a thing, because everyone is sitting in lines. Lines don't create interaction. You literally go to your desk, you sit down at your desk, you do your work. You may speak to one person, one side of you, maybe the other. You don't have interactions. You don't have those kind of social interactions which are important to create friendships. So we stop that. And what we do in AKQA is we bring people together. Because some of the best ideas come from those people who you wouldn't expect. I was working on a Google moonshot, which wasn't accepted, so we won't go there. But I was working on a Google moonshot with my boss Ajaz, and I basically told, I had an interaction with a taxi driver, a woman taxi driver, blonde, just come back from Marbella or wherever it was, total unexpected kind of influence on the idea itself. And she made it unbelievably better because I decided, because I had nothing to lose, to share that idea with her in the back of the cab for 5 minutes. I shared that idea and she made it unbelievably better and took me a completely different direction. Some of the best ideas come from technologists, and I have to say that because I'm the Chief Technology Officer. But a lot of the ideas do. Steve mentioned the Heineken Star Player piece. That was actually inspired by technology and what it could actually do. And if we put them in a basement somewhere, and those friends and those connections weren't made with each other, then all of a sudden we would never have had a Heineken Star Player. When we did Fit Eco Drive 5 years ago, one of the most awarded pieces of work in the industry, that was inspired by one of my team having lunch and dinner. It was having lunch with the Fit IT guys over in Turin, and he was literally sitting there talking away. Gareth talks in quite zeros and ones. I can say it myself, he's slightly autistic. And he said, did you know you can do this with the car, and you can take data out of the car to one of the creatives? All of a sudden, we created Fit Eco Drive. That is how all the best ideas come, from complete open innovation and imagination, from randomness and connections. So lastly, what you don't do, and I can't stand this, is that you create a room of innovation, an innovation lab. They're dust rooms. They create dust. You don't segregate the brilliance in AKQA, there's no innovation lab, there's no room. Everyone at their heart has to be passionate about taking something in a completely different direction. They're hired for their skills, but the interview process is so much more than just their skill set. It's much more about what's in their heart, what they're passionate about. It doesn't have to be about their job, but as long as they show true conviction to do something different because they care, that will come through. And when they're encouraged to walk down the street, well, walk down one of the aisles and it may not be their project, and they'll see a piece of work on the wall. As long as it's not confidential, obviously, they're allowed to take part and add value to it and say, do you know what? What about if you did X, Y, Z? And it takes it a different direction because they're passionate. So innovation and imagination is a very much cultural, guttural thing rather than it is sitting in a dusty room somewhere at the back. You may create it in a dusty room thereafter to keep it confidential, obviously. So ultimately, just to finish, you need to harness friendships. You need to harness kind of what you just saw with Dwan and Mark on that last slide, the ultimate love affair, the people you shouldn't be speaking to, but you are, and you do, and you find more. You need to harness play, and you need to literally do that through ultimate encouragement. Change organizational structures, change reporting structures to be able to literally drive innovation. Thank you very much.
For me, I guess the big thing is you do have people paying for this stuff, right? You do have people who have their product on the line. You do have people who are putting a lot of money behind it. How do you get them to sort of, the clients, how do you get the brands to really, really, really get behind all this sort of stuff? Because I think, again, internally it's awesome that we can do these things, but these people have the reputations, they have 100 years of brand sort of equity, that sort of thing. I don't know if it's worth just talking about the brands.
Well, I think from a micro point of view, you can, failure can happen in a micro point of view. It doesn't have to overall impact the client kind of budgets. It doesn't have to overall impact the end kind of idea. It's that small micro kind of ecosystem of failure which is allowed as an encouraged so that people can come up with random ideas. The client doesn't always have to be part of that. They can see an amazing idea at the end. That's not the way I would work, personally. I think that at the end of the day, clients live and breathe their brands. They live and breathe their customers as well. And they're people, I'm sure they have friends too. And I think that they can create social interactions. And I think if you allow them to be part of the process and you bring them into the overall process and encourage them to be part of it, that's when you get really good ideas too. And they become part of the journey rather than quite often, they give you a brief, it goes to the creative machine and it pops out the other end.
I may have gotten the wrong idea, but you talked a lot about avoiding rejection. But it feels like to me rejection is very much a part of all of our lives. We're rejected by potential partners. We're rejected. Clients reject our work.
Start the violins.
No, but I mean, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And I guess my point is there good rejection? Is rejection always bad?
So I think you could talk about constructive criticism, which again is a classic HR thing, which has been around for many years. I'm not saying that you're never told that you're wrong, because that's you quite often learn, and children learn when they have to go on the naughty step, coming back to children. So I think there's a balance, and my point is really that we've got the balance incorrect.